I've been putting off making this video for a while. This will be sort of my intro to the resurrection process of this bike here. A little backstory. Old roommate's bike, left it here a couple of years ago. It stuck around for a while. I didn't want it. Never had a motorcycle. Didn't have any interest. He was trying to sell it. I kind of helped him with that process, and people would come and look at it and things like that. And it started running rough, and the people that were looking at it didn't really know. They weren't very mechanically inclined, so to speak. I've never worked on motorcycles, but I've worked on everything else, you know, and it's got an engine, you put gas in it, I'll figure it out. They didn't want to buy it because it wasn't running and it died at an intersection, blah, blah, blah. I kind of took that as like a challenge, you know, like, oh, okay, well, let's see if it's actually, you know, busted, which it wasn't. I figured it out. New spark plugs, fresh gas, octane booster, you know, all the basic stuff, and got it running. And then, you know, one thing led to another. And I was freshly out of a very toxic relationship, sort of right in the early stages of a breakup. I was getting a battery for the bike, and I saw my ex on the way home, and I took that as a sign to take it for a spin, I guess. It was kind of like that moment of like, you know what? It just made sense, you know. I've got a little like dead end street here, and so, you know, I backed it in and everything. I was running fine at that point. Figured out the gears. You know, first gear worked okay. Did a couple of start stops, you know, with the clutch and everything. And I've, you know, driven a manual, still drive a manual. So that all, you know, made sense. After I got moving on that thing, it was game over. Like Spider-Man 3, right? When he gets the black goo on him, every time he wears it, it's harder and harder to take off until pretty soon it's part of you. You know, there's no escaping it. And that's just the best analogy that I can come up with when it comes to what it felt like to be on that bike. You know, first it was going down the street, then, you know, to the next intersection, and, you know, but every time I got on it, I would go a little further, I'd go a little faster, and it would be more and more difficult to stop. Part of the problem too is that, you know, it wasn't my bike, right? So it was like this, I gotta get it in while I can, you know. So I was just riding it every chance I got, and so it became this routine, so to speak. I'll put some pictures in. And I really had no idea how fortunate I was, right? Because I didn't know shit about motorcycles. I do now, of course, but yeah, so it would be like this nightly thing. Like I would wait until it's, you know, 10 o'clock at night, and I would, you know, sneak out and I'd roll the bike down the street and start it up and take off into the night. And man, it was awesome. But I also have, I've had several bad habits. I wouldn't go as far as saying like I was an alcoholic, but certainly I just go to extremes so if it's alcohol, if it's weed, it was like, if I had it, I would do all of it, right? I'd do it till it's gone, or it was bad. That's just, you know, how I went. And after this breakup, it was that, except super intense, right? So just doing anything to numb the pain. And then, you know, to add on top of that, it was like doing all those things to numb the pain and then getting on the bike to run from it, you know, and caught up with me. I got exactly what I asked for. And if anything, I got a deal, you know, hell of a deal. It wasn't just one crash, right? This was the last, most serious crash, the one that put me in the hospital. But I crashed this thing 3 times hard. Like totaled the bike after one crash, rode the thing home, fairings and headlight, all that cosmetic shit was gone at that point. But I got the thing home, ran out of gas on the way. It took me like 12 hours to get home. But I got the thing home. One of the forks was broken at the base, and it was leaking. No good, right? So, and it still wasn't my bike at that point. So it was like this frantic, like, oh, I got to piece it back together and then pretend like nothing ever happened. Also fucked up the wiring, so I had to bypass the fuse box because it kept shorting out. And I got a front fork set from a GSXR 1000. I managed to replace the front end and get everything calibrated, you know, and then just rode the absolute piss out of it. Instead of like counting my lucky stars and, oh man, that was close, or, you know, putting the bike back together. I mean, got it drivable, and then I don't know. know. I mean, now that it's, you know, it's been some time has passed, you know, it's like, I wasn't thinking is the answer, you know. But a lot of people ask me like, oh, what were you thinking? Like, I just wasn't. I mean, if I was thinking anything, it was like, well, I won't have to pay for the bike if I'm dead, you know, won't have to worry about then, like, what's going to happen. I mean, I knew what I was doing, you know, I'm not an idiot. And that's, I guess, the scariest part is like, I knew what I was doing. And every night I would take that bike out, every single night, even after all this, you know, headlight was gone, wiring was shot, so no lights, no blinkers, nothing, but it was drivable. So I'd fucking drive it. I would ride it up the mountain and I would just tell myself that I got to be back before sundown. It's leaking oil, you know, cracked the crankcase cover, and I crashed again. You know, I'll throw some pictures in here. I wish I had more pictures, but at the time it was kind of like, I almost like wanted to hide the evidence. Like I didn't want to acknowledge the fact that it happened and it happened again. I don't know, very, very strange time. First crash wasn't too bad. I basically just laid the bike down, you know, off the shoulder, hit the gravel, lost control. And I remember dragging my knees. I whiskey throttled the thing because I was like still hanging on the handlebars, and I just let go of the bike. And you know, so it was obviously still a crash, but it wasn't nearly as bad as a lot of the others that I've seen. The second one was definitely more severe. And at that point, the bike was, you know, built back enough to where I could ride it, bypassed all the fuses. I didn't have a speedometer. I didn't have like a tack, or, you know, that whole interface was gone. So I didn't know how fast I was going, you know, all that kind of stuff that isn't necessarily a big deal, but when you're hauling ass, you know, it's more important than it would be otherwise. I came around this corner and it was, what do they call it? A decreasing radius, right? So it starts as like a 60-degree turn, but then it tightens up, you know, part of the way through. Or you think like, you know, you go into a turn and you're expecting to like exit here, but instead it keeps going. And so it kind of messes you up. And obviously I was going too fast, which I just living like there was no tomorrow, you know, but I was in fifth gear and I know that. So I was doing 60 easy. Came around the corner, started into the corner, and it started to tighten up on me. I panicked, and then I made the mistake of looking at a point like to the side of the road, which anybody who owns a bike knows that is a huge no-no, which is target fixation. You go where you look, especially when you're leaning into a turn. You want to look at your exit, you want to look in front of you, ahead of you, you know, around the corner progressively, because if you focus on a distinct point, especially on the outside of the corner, that's where you end up. And sure enough, that's where I went. Fortunately, there was no car in the other lane. I dumped the bike, and the bike hit a curb and endoed into it was like a fence or a post, a steel. I've got pictures of it, I'll throw up. And then I tumbled and rolled. I had a backpack on, thank God. And then I remember landing on my feet. It was crazy because like I when it was all said and done, I was like standing up, and I was just furious because it was just like it fucked up my plan, you know, and I was going to go get gas, and then I was going to go keep riding, and I had this whole thing in my mind of what I was going to do. Everything stopped, you know, but I wasn't, if anything, I was more worried about the bike, which, you know, that's how it goes. But two people saw, there was an old guy walking his dog and some little dishwasher guy from the hotel across the street, and they come running over and freaking out because they saw, you know, but it was all concrete and cement, you know. Fortunately, like I said, I had that backpack on. Crash was bad. When I laid the bike down, it just slid for a good amount of time and chewed up, you know, the handlebars, the right handlebar, brake lever, brake fluid reservoir, all that good stuff on that side. Then it hit the curb and endoed, and everything, parts, you know, flew everywhere and stuff. The cops got called, and I managed to talk my way out of it, thank God, because obviously I had been drinking and smoking and just everything, dude, everything. It's like like secondhand suicide, where it's like not putting a gun to your head, but kind of sort of just, you know, leaving it up to chance, you know, because like I said, I knew what I was doing. And, you know, now that enough time has passed, and that you know, that I've physically healed and emotionally I've sort of done some recuperating. I was over here, you know, being upset or bent out of shape about a girl I don't even like, you know, or didn't even like at the time. I didn't understand that, but like, it's just crazy what, you know, what emotions will do to you. I was over here bent out of shape about this girl that I couldn't stand in the first place. It's just bizarre. I think we've all been there. No matter who you are, I think we all deep down just want somebody to care, you know? And when it doesn't feel like anybody does care, I think we have a tendency as human beings to do more and more things to kind of see what it would take to get somebody to care. It's like when a child, you know, keeps doing things to find that boundary. I guess it's just kind of human nature. I'm still figuring it all out, but yeah, second crash was bad, but I walked away unscathed. I had to bypass the anti-theft, like ignition. It took me like 3 hours, but I got the thing running. It was completely out of oil and coolant at that point, and decided to just ride it home, which I did. And she made it back, surprisingly. And I could have stopped. I could have stopped there. I should have. I did for a while because I had to heal up. I couldn't walk. I fucked up my knee, but no hospital. You know, I didn't have to do any of that. I managed to make it home, and then I like sort of made a sling for my leg, kept it elevated. I should have known better. You know, I should have been like, okay, dude, this is enough, but it wasn't. Made a little extra money doing some work on the side and got the bike paid off, you know, finally made it mine, right? My first ride after I paid the thing off, the day of, I got into it with my roommate and I wanted to storm off, which, you know, I did, but what better way to storm off than on a motorcycle? I had patched up the hole in the crankcase, but it was still leaking. It was unrideable. No brake lever, so I was counting on just the rear brake. No speedometer, no tack, no lights, and also like no regard for frame damage or a bending of an axle, and I took off. I had to stop because it was boiling coolant. Stopped at a bar, cooled the bike off, got on the bike, was jamming out to my favorite song at the time. I was coming up to this intersection that I would hit right before I would like head off into the mountains, you know, and it was summer. It was like 6 p.m. in August. It was beautiful out. It was scattered clouds, like pink, you know. It was perfect. It was perfect. Everything was perfect. And normally, you know, this route that I would take, or anytime I'd be on the bike, it would be late at night, right? Because I was trying to do it low key under the radar. I also had a blood alcohol level of like 0.12, basically, right? So 0.08, 0.12. Way over. Almost double. Came flying up over that corner going way too fast. No brakes. The light was red at the intersection. In the past, I've always only been the only one at the intersection, so it was like you'd have plenty of time. Well, there was like, I want to say like 6 cars there already. So it was like I came right up I crested the hill, and it was like I needed to stop. There's no room. I obviously panicked and slammed on my rear brakes, and it's a rear brake. So, you know, when you panic brake on the rear, you're just gonna lock up the tire, which on top of that, there was oil and coolant all over the rear tire. So it was just like ice skating, you know, and it didn't even squeal when I locked it up. It just like, it was silent because it was so slick. You know, I had 2 options, and it was either, you know, slam into the back of like some little Nissan mini truck and bend myself over the tailgate going like 40, 50 miles an hour, or go off the road into the ditch and, you know, take my chances, which I'll put some other pictures up here, which I've got kind of like my skid mark off the side of the road. Barely missed the light pole, which I don't even remember it being there when it was all going down, but it started as a low side. But then I think once it clipped the curb, I flipped over the bike. I think I was still sort of like on the bike when I landed on my upper body, because I fractured my spine in 2 places. One of them was a compression fracture, which I believe was from the actual motorcycle landing on me. So I laid the bike down, bike hit the curb, flipped over, and then I think I was still straddling it, and I started going down, and then the bike sort of went on top of me, and then, you know, the rest happened. Gas tank flew off, battery flew out, fluid everywhere, coolant, you know. I went from the edge of the curb to where I landed was about 35 feet. The first thing I did was hit the kill switch on the bike, which, like, you know, like that was gonna fucking do anything. But immediately threw up all over myself. Couldn't breathe. I might have lost consciousness for a few seconds, because when I got up and was like But like, I was trying to tell everybody that I was fine, like, don't call the cops, right? And I obviously couldn't speak, but they were already on their phone when I turned around, so that means a few seconds had passed. But yeah, then I laid down on the grass on the side of the road and looked up at the sky, and I thought that was it. I was in no pain, but I couldn't breathe. You know, I was losing consciousness. I remember the lady holding my hand, you know, just bawling her eyes out because she thought I was dying. It looked like I was dying because when I sort of like came to, you know, like it was like an outer body experience, you know, for those several minutes. I was convulsing, like my whole body was like fighting to stay conscious, and it was completely out of my control. And it wasn't until they pretty much got there that I realized what I was doing and what it looked like to everybody else, you know. But it looked like I was like having a stroke or like a seizure. Thank God I wasn't. You know, I started breathing on my own again a couple minutes, like 1 or 2 minutes before paramedics got there. I realized like I was gonna live, you know. And I remember feeling embarrassed, you know. Felt embarrassed about having to tell my mom what happened. She had bought me a motorcycle helmet for my birthday, and I hadn't even got it yet, you know. And just knowing that it could have just so easily been avoided. You start to think about all those stupid decisions that you make or made up until that point. Like, oh man, I could have done this. I could have not done this, you know. Fortunately, I didn't hit anybody else. I'm thankful for that. But then something like this happens, you start to think, well, what about all those other times that you could have, you know? Anyway, I guess that's the start of an intro. I'm gonna just be documenting the resurrection process. I just feel like I'm not the only one that's going through things that end up putting people in situations like that. And so I feel like me talking about my story, even if one person sees it or hears it and resonates with it, you know, I'll have done something. You know, it's all stuff that happened to me, and talking through it I think helps quite a bit. It'll be fun though. It'll be fun. I'm straight, you know, everything is all healed up, other than some scars and a bum knee here and there. I'm all good. She's all good too. We'll get the rest of it buffed out, but really I'm just working on the block at this point. I'm gonna get new piston rings. I'm just about finished with the cylinder head reassembly. But yeah, I just wanted to make sort of like an intro to the channel. Stay safe out there. Ride safe, ride smart. If you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. As good as it feels getting out there and doing some throttle therapy, just make sure you come home. People love you. People need you. You have no idea what sort of effect that's going to have on people that are close to you, people in your life. People maybe that you haven't seen for years are going to now have to live with something like that because you just chose not to care. So be smart. And I love you. I care about you. I want you home safe, if anything else. I want to find my people because I know you're out there. But yeah, ride safe, everybody.